Welcome. I'm Kristen, and this is the Simple Handmade Everyday Podcast, where I talk about living a creative, intentional life. I like to chat about quilting, knitting, what I'm reading and watching, and even a little bit about keeping a cozy, organized home. You can find me online at my blog, Simple Handmade Everyday at kristenesser.com, or on Instagram at kristenesser. I've got my cup of tea in hand, so let's settle in for a chat. Welcome to episode 19. Wow, happy 2019. This is the first chance I've had to record since before the holidays. And at this point, Christmas is over, New Year's is in the rearview mirror, the kids are back at college. I should say 2 of them are back at college, 1 is just back at school. And we're starting to settle back into the rhythm and routine that I have been missing and craving. I had 2 weeks off during the holidays, and it was glorious. I definitely enjoyed having the downtime, but I have to admit that that feeling, if you read Little Women, there was a part of it, and I'm probably going to describe this badly, but there's a part in Little Women where the girls are all really craving doing their own things and like letting go of all the chores and responsibility. And Marmee, in all her wisdom, lets them do that. And so I can't exactly remember everything. I know that Jo goes out in a boat and, she just spends all day out there. I don't remember if she's like sketching or something, but she comes back completely sunburned. And basically everybody indulges themselves to the point of excess. And so Marmee is sort of teaching them this lesson that you think you want all the free time in the world, but in reality, it's too much. It's too much to not have to do any work. The play is more valuable because you also have the work to balance it out. And that's kind of how I was feeling after a few days of like barely getting out of my pajamas and just sitting on the couch reading book after book. I was just like, you know what? I need to go for a walk. I need to eat a salad. I need to go run some errands. I need to get my life going, even, within the vacation parameters there. But so I don't really mind being kind of back to it now. The only thing I do mind is I really loved having all of my 3 kids home and under one roof. That's the part of sending especially that first kid off to college where it sort of breaks that chain of everybody living at home. And so it's so special to have everybody back, even though I have to say that the dishwasher is always full. There is always stuff laying around. It's so amazing now that we just have 1 kid home, how clean and neat everything stays and how it takes us sometimes a couple days to fill up a dishwasher. So there's definitely a difference to having 5 people under a roof and 3 people. But I would take that any day of the week to have, everybody home. And, we kind of knocked a few things off the bucket list of just, we never go on like a big vacation during Christmas, during the winter break, because I don't know, we're really just a family of homebodies. But we did a hike and we did a game night and we went to the movies and we had a celebratory dinner and all those kinds of things. But enough about that. I'm sure that everybody has just had enough of people's Christmas trees and words of the year and New Year's resolutions. So we are well into January, so let's just move on. Once again, I forgot to talk about the tea I'm drinking, which I always like to do, and this is a really fun one. So I think I mentioned in the last podcast that my daughter did some traveling through Europe on her way home after her semester abroad, and one of the places she went was London, where she got to actually stay with a friend, which was just really did my mama's heart good to know that she was being well taken care of. So they did a ton of sightseeing. She actually took a picture of the plaque of Selfridges, and we watched Mr. Selfridge together on PBS, so that was pretty fun. But she got me tea from Fortnum and Mason, which is apparently like a department store. I said, is it like Selfridges? And I guess not quite, but it's a department store. And she got me this tea in a beautiful tin called the Royal Blend. And I just have to read the bottom of it where it says, first blended for King Edward VII in the summer of 1902. Royal Blend has been popular ever since for its smooth honey-like flavor. and it is one of the best teas I've ever had. I love it, and I'm going to keep this little tin forever. So I was able to share that with her while she was home, and that's what I'm drinking right now. I hope that you are having some sort of a fun beverage as well as you listen to this, as we kind of have our chat over coffee or tea or a martini, if that is your thing. That's fine too. Let's move on to quilting, because you know why? I have something to report, because I finished a thing. I'm so excited to say that the Moda Bake Shop Choose Your Own Adventure quilt along, which I was a part of in the summer, I have quilted that quilt. So it has been sitting basted. Well, actually, a few episodes ago, I talked about that I wanted to long arm it, because I wanted to get better at long arming, and it was just so big. It just didn't seem like fun to cram through a domestic machine. But then it turned out the quilt shop that had the long arm, she just said she was not going to do long arming anymore. But I have since found out they're just actually going out of business. So that's sad. And there's just no place to rent a long arm around here. And I will admit that I took the classes and did like my 2 hours of free long arm time that came with the class, and then a year went by and I never did it. So I did not support her the way I should have. So I feel bad about that. But so then I went ahead and basted it. I spray basted this Moda Bake Shop quilt, and there it just sat, like staring at me and just like intimidating me. And I've talked about just straight line quilting it, and I was just a fountain of indecision about what I wanted to do with this quilt. And then my daughter, when she was packing to come home from Norway, said, I cannot fit my bedding in. She had this just kind of dorm bedding, but we sent it with her with one of those. She did a lot of her packing in those space bags you can get from Ziploc that you put in like a big Ziploc bag, and you hook a vacuum cleaner up to it and it sucks all the air out, so things get really flat. But for a number of reasons I won't go into, things did not fit on the way back. So it was not expensive bedding. So I'm just like, leave it. It'll be fine. And then I thought, you know what? I've got this Moda Bake Shop quilt. My daughter loves blue, and this quilt is blue and gray and white. And so I sent her a picture and said, what about this? And she's like, oh, I would love that. So that meant that I needed to get it quilted. And I still put it off for weeks until she actually got home. And then finally, I was so intimidated. So this quilt is a medallion quilt. There's a center star block, and then 4 patches that go around that. So it's a medallion. So it's built in these borders out. And after and there's these series of like skinny borders. For me, they're white of the background fabric, so that the math works out for each of the borders as they're moving out of these pieced block borders. So there's a number of also skinny borders in there that are, who knows how to quilt those things. So it goes center star, 4 patch, then kind of a modified pinwheel, then flying geese, and then this other block, I don't even know what it's called. And then a border. So I didn't know what to do. So I thought about straight line quilting. But ultimately, Holly Ann over at String and Story, who has long-armed a quilt for me, she also did this quilt along in the summer. And she did a blog series on how to quilt each one of these borders. And she has classes like of intro to free motion. She's kind of got beginning, intermediate, and which she calls a rock star status. I know I kind of talked about this before, but just as a reminder. So she, on her blog, did quilting plans for this exact quilt and gave you lots of different ideas of how to do it. So I got on there, and I basically just, with a little snipping tool on my computer, just snipped out the ones that kind of spoke to me, that I liked the way they looked, that I felt confident that I could perform them. Meaning I did not pick anything that had feathers or spirals or swirls. These are not my things. And I just pasted them onto a piece of paper as like inspiration. And then I set to work. And what was kind of cool about the center medallion is that because she created these quilting plans on graph paper, I feel like she was not overly influenced by the design of the star, and I mean that in a really good way. So I would have just taken each, I don't remember, it's probably like in reality, like 25 patch or something, just to make the center star of a combination of just patches and quarter log cabin blocks and half square triangles. And so it forms this star. But I would have looked at each of those patches separately. But she created, with sort of marking, a quilted star within this star, sort of being inspired by the blocks that are there, but kind of doing her own thing. And I never would have thought of that. And it was kind of interesting to mark because I used a Hera marker, not like a friction or anything that, water soluble or air soluble marker, because there was a lot of white on this quilt and I'm just a little afraid. I just didn't really want to mark it. So I used a Hera marker, which means I marked small amounts at a time because that mark kind of starts to come out. So that was a little tricky, but I absolutely adore how it came out. And I'll put a picture in the show notes. But from there, I just came up with, inspired by her, little motifs for each type of block. So I totally custom quilted the whole thing. It took many hours, but you know what? I loved it. I really enjoyed myself, and I'm usually so terrified of quilting and ruining a quilt, and I don't think I really tore anything out that I can remember, which is really unusual for me. And the other thing I really realized is, even though this custom quilting, it's definitely more densely quilted than anything I've ever done, free motion quilting goes so much faster than straight line quilting because you're just covering more area in a more fluid way. So that was really fun. And I bring this up because when it came to the last, it's like a 3-inch border, I did not know what to do with that. And it was a little too wide for me to do something like ribbon candy or something like that. I just thought, if I get off, I'm just going to be so angry. So I just did some straight line quilting in those borders. And they're just about a 1/4 inch apart. And I just did like a series of 2, and then I left some space, and then a series of 3, just to really, attach those 3 layers, because there was just 3 inches. There was just no way I was going to do it every 1/4 inch because I was just crawling out of my skin with boredom just doing these long lines, and I was so much more self-conscious about the imperfections of me getting a little crooked or whatever. When you're doing the free motion, especially on top of with a blending thread on top of a print fabric, it's just very forgiving. And so there was kind of a lot of lessons for me in that. Just buckle down and do the free motion and have some fun with it. Have a glass of wine, just loosen up a bit. So that was really fun. And then I took that center motif, created another one, and put some 4 patches. So I just sort of mimicked the center part of this quilt and made a pillow sham to go with the quilt for my daughter. And that I did with an all over paisley design. At that point, I was like, it was the day before she was leaving, and I wasn't doing any more custom quilting. But it came out really cute when it washed it and dried it, and it crinkled up, all those little imperfections, they just sink to the background, literally. And it came out really cute. My only fear was that it was not made to be a bed-size quilt. It's 73 by 73, and I think we all know that twin beds are longer, so I was worried about that. But ultimately, she just actually has another quilt that I made that she put over the foot of her bed, so that worked out. But I think in the long run, we might just get her like a gray duvet, and then that can hang over the edge of the bed, and then this can be kind of a topper for that. But it's actually very her and very cute. And so pop over to the blog if you get a chance, and I'll put up some pictures in the show notes. That quilting win has spurred me to action, in my mind anyways, not actually physically yet, to finish off some other quilts. I'd said in previous podcasts that 2019 is I was going to quilt all the quilts. So first one's done. I'm feeling some confidence, so I definitely want to keep going with that. And I have in my sewing room set up one of those drying racks that you can get for drying clothes outside, just a cheapy one from Target that I actually took out of the garage. It's my daughter's for her laundry. I had to buy her another one. So I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it's just a little collapsible rack, but it's so perfect for putting all my whips on it. So all the quilts that I'm working on are just right on there, and they're top of mind. It looks kind of pretty. I would have liked to find a wood one, but they were really expensive. This was like a $14 just white one from Target, and I feel like my the things that I need to finish are it's going to be good for me to be able to see them. I'm a very visual person, out of sight, out of mind for me. So I've got about 4 or 5 more quilts that I really need to knock out the quilting for. But I'm really itching to do a piecing project. So I'm ordering fabric for a couple of those, and I'll talk more about that later. But yeah, I'm just feeling some really good energy about quilting right now. And of course, the other big quilting project that I'm working on is the Hand Pieced QAL. Are you sewing along with us? We just did the quilt reveal on January 7th. And so it's all out there now. It's a small quilt, just 23 by 23. The blocks are just 6 inches finished, so it's very, very doable. I was just telling somebody today that I did a little test, and I don't think that any particular block will take anyone longer than 2 hours in a week to do. And that's, for some of them, that's generous. So I feel like most people can carve out, 15 or 20 minutes an evening to work on this. So I hope you join us. We have over 1,000 people sewing along with us in our closed Facebook group. And I know there's I got emails from people saying, I don't do Facebook, which is completely fine. You don't have to, but I'm really hoping that place, and it already is becoming this, but becomes a place of just community and sharing our sewing projects and our triumphs and the challenges. And we have a lot of people in that group that have way more years of experience than Patty or I in hand piecing, and I know they are going to be an invaluable source of information and encouragement. So I'm really excited about that. The first tutorial goes up on January 21st. So we revealed the quilt on the 7th and gave people a couple of weeks to download the coloring sheets. So there's coloring sheets, and there's 2 different setting options available. People can order their fabric, play around, pull from their stash, pull out those colored pencils. And so everybody will be ready to go on the 21st for the first tutorial. Every week will be a tutorial. A lot of them have videos, lots of pictures and step outs. So, completely doable for anybody. So anyways, that is my pitch for the Hand Pieced QAL, and I hope that you will join us. For the knitting part of this podcast, I'm just going to say sock. I'm knitting a sock. It's the second sock of the same socks I've been knitting for months. Enough said about that. Maybe I will find some knitting mojo in 2019, but I don't have it right now. I mean, I'm enjoying the sock, but nobody wants my socks. And I can only wear so many hand-knitted socks in Southern California. So I might need to just let that go and stick to hand piecing in the evenings instead of knitting. I don't know. I am totally excited to talk to you about what I've been reading, because for me, Christmas is about getting books. And books I got. So the first one that I want to talk about is Kingdom of the Blind by Louise Penny. It is the new book in the Louise Penny Inspector Gamache series. If you've been listening before, you know that I am obsessed with this series. I love it. I love the Gamaches, both Armand Gamache, the detective, and his wife, Renee Marie. And I feel like they inspire me to want to be a better person, to eat better food and dress better and be more sophisticated. you know how I get that way about characters. I want to be friends with them in real life so badly. But anyways, so I don't want to really tell too much about the book because, it's a series. It's like, I think maybe number 12 in a series that, sort of keeps getting better, although it may have hit its high point somewhere in the middle there, but it's still really good. And I can't really talk about it too much, or it gives away stuff that happened previously in the series. But I feel that it is, I said this before, that these mysteries, which I really love mysteries, but these are really well written. I talked, I think, in the last podcast about how they took Still Life, her first book in this series, and made it into a made-for-TV movie, and it did not translate. And as I was reading this book, I realized why, and that's because so much of the rich detail and more of the literary side of these books, I mean, I'm not saying it's War and Peace, but it happens inside people's heads, if you know what I mean. And it's just something that doesn't come across in something like a movie. So, although apparently here, I'm just going to throw this out here right now. We watched Crazy Rich Asians as a family over the break, and it was really fun. It was a really cute romantic comedy, and visually it was stunning. Just, because they're crazy rich, and the weddings and parties they have, it's like nothing I ever could have imagined. And so I made the comment to somebody about, I wonder how the book is. The book's supposed to be really good, but I'm not sure that I could have imagined anything as opulent as what came across in the movie. And I read then later on a review of the book that said, the movie was really good, and I think it was pretty true to the book, but when you read the book, it's even better in terms of picturing, the opulence. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. So it must be pretty well written, because I could not have imagined, the crazy cinematography. So Kingdom of the Blind, if you're into mysteries, get into that series. I don't think you will regret it. The book that I'm reading right now, and much to my surprise I am struggling with, is The Clockmaker's Daughter by Kate Morton. Kate Morton is another favorite author of mine. The Forgotten Garden is one of my all-time favorite books. I love that book. And she has a lot of stories that take place in different periods of time. So it can be a little bit confusing. And most of her books have that element to it. Different characters, different time periods. And so you kind of have to stay on top of your game as you're reading. And I've liked every book she's written. Forgotten Garden, The House at Riverton, The Secret Keeper's Daughter. The only one I didn't really care for was called The Distant Hours. So I was very excited about this. And I'm not that far in, and I don't know why it's not grabbing me. I feel like I need to really, I'm not going to give up on it yet. I need to put in, just a good couple hours to kind of, I think, get into the story proper. But, so I'm doing that thing right now where, because I'm not loving what I'm reading, I'm kind of not reading. So I'm just like, okay, that's no good. You need to just figure out if you want to read this book or if you just need to set it aside. And I suspect that I will get into it, but honestly, I haven't yet. And the other books that I got for Christmas that I'm just starting to explore is I got the Skinny Taste cookbook. A lot of our favorite family recipes in this house are from Skinny Taste, which are not diety at all. And I've posted several times about the chicken parmesan recipe, baked chicken parmesan. It's it's like my kid's favorite, one of the favorite things that I make. And so I just wanted to, get more of her recipes. She posts a ton for free on her blog, but I figured there were some other recipes, and I just kind of wanted to support her as a person who's putting stuff out there. So I got the Skinny Taste cookbook, and it's her older one. She just had one coming out right now called One and Done, but I'm not huge into crockpot meals. I'm sure they're very good, but I just wanted to go with something that had a little more depth for us. And so we've just tried a few of those recipes. I do highly recommend that cookbook. She really creates family-friendly recipes that taste good, that are not diety in any way, but are healthy. And isn't that kind of what we're all going for? The other book that I got is Becoming by Michelle Obama. I have heard nothing but amazing things about this book, so I'm very excited about reading that. I haven't gotten to it yet. And the last one is called Florette Farm's Cut Flower Garden, because this is another dream of mine, because I need more hobbies, obviously, but I would love to grow flowers in our backyard that I could cut and bring inside. And so I follow her on Instagram. We read her blog. The pictures are stunning. It looks like an amazing book. And she's actually on the West Coast with me. Seems like a lot of gardening things come from the East Coast. And I always want to say, if you guys like gardening so much, you should live in California, because we can garden year round here. But no, like so many days. They live in Portland, Maine, where the growing season is 4 months long or something. And you guys should move to California. You'd go crazy. So I looked up where she's from, and interestingly, this garden is, her flower farm, rather, is in Mount Vernon, Washington, which is a place that we go for vacation every other year. We go do this family lake house with my extended family. And the last time we did it a couple years ago, we went to Le Conner, which is also right there. And that is where the Le Conner fabric line from Jira Brandvig from Quilting in the Rain, that little adorable town called Le Conner inspired this whole fabric line. And I had made a quilt for market for that fabric line, and I loved it. And so we just had to go visit, and it was great. So it's funny that this year I have a new field trip for us to take when we go up there. And I don't even know if you can go visit this farm, but I'm going to do it even if it's not allowed. So those are the books that I'm kind of excited about. And so I've definitely got quite a pile on my nightstand right now. Let's talk about shows to watch. I've got some good ones here as well. So first of all, my friend Frances over at the Off Kilter Quilt mentioned that she was watching Vanity Fair on Amazon Prime and thought that I might like it, and she was not wrong. So that it's a Prime original. It doesn't mean I love how they call it an original. It's not like it's an original story, but it's from 2018. It's 7 episodes, and it is based on the book by William Makepeace Thackeray, which is about a character named Becky Sharp. It takes place during the Napoleonic War, so it's the early 1800s. So of course, it's got the awesome, outfits and the whole period piece look that I adore. And again, I don't want to give too much away, but Becky Sharp is a character who was born in that period. I think she's an orphan. So she was born into not great circumstances. I think her father was an artist and her mom was an opera singer. They're dead by the time the movie starts or show starts. And it's her story of her making her way in this world as a woman that is coming from nothing. And as we know from Pride and Prejudice and all these stories, if you do not come from money, you are just in trouble. And it's crazy. Your marriage prospects are really limited, but marriage is really the only way out is to marry some money. And so it's really her story of how she social climbs out of this position of deficit that she is born into. And there are many ups and downs. You have many feelings about her, from rooting her on to being very disappointed to being angry. It's quite a ride. It's funny in some places, and it's beautifully shot. But it's a very interesting show. So I absolutely recommend Vanity Fair on Amazon Prime. And then I've probably talked about this before. This is not a new one, but I did watch the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society again because I knew that my daughter would like it, and she couldn't get it on Norwegian Netflix while she was there. So I'm like, we have to watch this. And so that was really fun. And if you are missing your Downton Abbey people, it has Lady Rose, it has Lady Sybil, it has Isabel Crawley. I feel like it is a Downton Abbey family reunion. And so that is really, really fun to watch. I read the book years ago. I remembered virtually nothing about it. I hear that it's quite, the movie and the book are kind of different, but that doesn't even bother me. Oh, also, whoever the guy is that Lady Mary marries on Downton Abbey, he's in this too. So there's 4 characters at least from Downton Abbey in it. So that was really, really fun. And lastly, for my homemaking segment, it's also going to be a show to watch because would I be remiss if I did not bring up the Netflix original Tidying Up with Marie Kondo? So who read this book? Raise your hand if you read what is it? I can't remember what it's called. The Magical Art of Tidying Up. I feel like that's not quite right. But whatever the Marie Kondo book was from, again, how long ago? I could have done a little research before we talked about this, but maybe 5 years ago. So I read it. It was fine. I did not love it. She came off actually to me kind of weird because she has always been obsessed with organizing, even as a child, and she would beg people to organize things in her family. And I was just like, I cannot really relate to you, 8-year-old Marie Kondo. I just don't really get this. But I did have one big takeaway from that book, and that was the way that she folds, which I've now realized is not exactly right, but it's my own version of how she folds, where she, like for t-shirts, for instance, I'm sure you've probably seen this and you're like, you don't have to explain this, Kristen, the whole world has seen this, but she folds them into basically little rectangles, and then she stacks them on end like file folders so that when you look into a drawer, you can see all the shirts, where normal people just fold them and put them in your drawer so that you only ever see the one on the top, right? So once I started changing over to that, my husband was like, this is amazing. I can see every shirt, so that was a really good takeaway. And that was kind of enough. I think I got that book from the library or on Kindle. That was a great takeaway. So then when this showed up on Netflix and people were binge watching it, I was like, I don't know. Haven't we had enough of these kinds of shows? These organizing shows, and what else could there be to say? Well, there's a few more things left to say, as it turns out. So I don't know if you ever watched Hoarders or Clean House. Those are, you think maybe it's similar to those things. I actually really, we used to get a kick out of watching those. But with like Clean House, they would bring like a team in to these people whose house are a mess. They kind of bring a team in and make you go through it with them. But in reality, they have, a dozen professional organizers and they're doing all the work. That's not the way this goes. First of all, Marie Kondo is, in fact, the most adorable human being on the earth. It's crazy. And she is absolutely delightful and non-judgmental and just so compassionate and helpful. So she goes into these people's houses and they cherry pick people. There's people with toddlers. There's an empty nester. There's someone, a widow who needs to deal with, her husband's, belongings. There's people who want to have a baby, just all kinds of different reasons why people are being spurred on to wanting to get organized. And a lot of these houses are not too crazy. As a matter of fact, a few of them, you would never think these people had a problem. Like the woman who's the widow, she kind of had a beautiful, clean house. But once you start opening drawers and closets, and then even bedrooms of kids who have moved out that have just become storage areas, like they're sort of like dirty little secrets everywhere. I can kind of relate to that. My house looks pretty neat, but I do feel like we're kind of bursting out of some closets and drawers sometimes. And so she comes in and just helps people get control of this. And, you can watch it to find out. But what I really liked about it is that they had to do the work. Like, she explains things to them, and all the standard responses, excuses come up. Like, as I try to explain this to my husband and about the whole, she has the thing that you pick up every item and you ask yourself, does this spark joy? And my husband's like, are you kidding me? Like, it's a t-shirt, it's a pair of underwear, it's a pair of socks. What does this mean, spark joy? And she completely goes over that, and she handles, all the things about, like, it doesn't spark joy, but I really kind of need it, and how to handle that. The other thing that she does that I think is really interesting, and I'm never going to do it, but I kind of think that I should, is that she has you take like all of your clothes from all over the house and dump them on your bed towards like a mountain, so that you can really grasp how much stuff you own, because it's when it's all spread out. This is in the closet, this is in the coat closet downstairs, this is in drawers. It turns out there's a whole lot of people that use closets in other rooms. Like, I have the master closet, but my husband keeps all his in the spare guest room closet down the hall or whatever. So you get all that together, and I think it's really eye-opening. But I'm probably not going to do that, to be honest with you. But it did spur me one afternoon when I was kind of at odds and I knew I should have been doing something, but I didn't feel like doing that thing. I started going through my dresser, and I did go through one drawer at a time and dump it out and refold things the way, like my underwear and my socks, the way she did. I rearranged some things. By the time I got done, I didn't even think that I had too much stuff in these drawers, because I actually do go through my stuff quite often. I still had a big bag to go to Goodwill and a bag of trash, and I finally tackled these little drawers that have jewelry and a lot of stuff from when my mom passed away, costume jewelry, and a lot of little mementos from the kids when they were little, and I was a Girl Scout leader, and I just have always been kind of afraid of those drawers, and I just dumped them out and did it, and so it felt really good, and I get a little thrill every time I open my sock drawer now. So, it's pretty fun. But I did get really real about, I've been carrying these slips around with me since high school, and to be honest with you, I can't remember the last time I wore a slip, so I'm just like, but I've always kept them. What if I need a slip? I had 3 slips, and I'm just like, you know what? If I ever need a slip, I'll go buy one, because I've been carrying these around for like 30 years. This is ridiculous. So, Marie Kondo, tidying up. You cannot help but be a little bit inspired by watching it. I cannot help but be a little bit inspired. And my daughter, Chloe, she watched it with me for 10 minutes, and she's like, this makes me want to completely just clean up my entire life. I'm like, right? I wish my husband felt the same way. He just keeps saying, things are fine the way they are, but I will convert him yet. So that about wraps up this episode. I do want to mention a few people who have left reviews on Apple Podcasts. I know I always say iTunes reviews, but in reality, it's the Apple Podcast app is where you would leave the reviews. So FL Quilter, and this next one, I'm just going to say the letters. It's RDC JRC and Minnie Greer. You 3 all left very nice reviews, and I'm just so happy that people listening are just, the feedback I'm getting is it's like just chatting with a friend, and that's exactly the way I want it to be. Please feel free to chat back by either commenting on the show notes or Instagram, Facebook, shoot me an email. However, I love to hear what you're doing. I love to hear what's resonating with you. So I would appreciate if anyone would leave a review or a rating on the Apple Podcast app. I really appreciate that. And that's about it. I hope that you guys are having a great start to 2019. Don't, think that you have to hit all your goals in 1 month. Take it slow, just one bite at a time. And let's just have a great 2019 together. We'll see you next time.